Hello and welcome to Inside News. I'm Dale Matthews and I'm joined by Vic Nakudian, by Mike Jones, and by Raymond Smith. Hello, gentlemen.
Good evening, Dale.
Hi, Dale.
Good evening.
So we're going to start out tonight's news with an apology from me. Yes, well, that's the right thing to do. I got all the details right about the newest person to jump into the commissioner's rates, but I made an error in evaluating the details. This fellow's name is Paul Martin, David Martin. David Martin is apparently not the Rotary Club candidate that we had anticipated would eventually jump into this, and so I was wrong. Look, I think it's important that if you make a mistake, you say it immediately. You say it right up front. You don't hide it on page 7, you know, down below the fold.
Yeah.
You talk about it and tell everybody.
I'm dying to know. How did you come upon this information that you were grievously in error last night? Did somebody call you? The voice of
reason? Yes, Rob Pell sent me an email, and he said, you know, love the show, watch the show, appear on the show, but you were wrong about that. So, okay, I was wrong. So, sorry, and we're going to move along. But want to get that right up front. You should always do it right up front. That's what responsible people do when they make a mistake.
Well, but hang on a second. Was there more to that? Well, no. I was just wondering if he's not the local good old boys network candidate, then he has to be something other than that. And if there's something more to that, then you know,
have no more details. Rob just said he's not the Rotary Club good old boy type.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right on.
So, as agreed, when we went, and all of us on this show tonight were there, when we went to the GOP party invitational to commissioner candidates, a number of people spoke, and that video, although it's 2 hours long, has gotten 3 times, by this time, 3 times the normal views of our shows. So it puts it right up there, you know, closing in on our election night coverage. People want to know about the candidates. And Raymond Smith is here. He was one of the candidates that spoke. Mike Jones was doing the entire broadcast. And Vic Nakudian was there to add flavor and color. And so we agreed that what we do was that on this show, we would play back just the statement that was made by a candidate and not anybody's questions of them. The questions had a tendency to be fairly pointed, and that we would not, as we usually do, play back the video and laugh about it. We're not going to do that. We're going to give each candidate a fair chance to state their entire issue. And then later, when we put video up on the web, we will play back that person and the questions and answers that people asked them, but we're not going to comment. It seems like the right thing to do. So here is what was said. 90 seconds was his entire statement of his campaign, or his reasons to run. This is Paul Walter.
Only reason I'm running is because this is a year where people are sick and tired of establishment candidates. They're sick and tired of people who work for the government running for office, because when people work for the government and they go run for office and they get in, all they got to do is serve the government. They're not going to serve the people, and that's why Donald Trump, Ben Carson, and those kind are very popular in this country. Lily Morgan and Dan DeYoung scared the hell out of me. I'm going to be very honest with you, because I see the city of Grants Pass taking over the county through those 2 candidates. And that's why I'm running for office, and I'm going to tell this to the public, because the city of Grants Pass never liked that the county doesn't pay a lot of taxes, and our taxes are pretty low. And the city taxes are very, very high, and I can tell you that firsthand because I own 3 homes in the city that we rent out, and 2 homes are, 1 home is higher than my home in the county, almost twice, 2 to 1. And that's why I'm running. You have to elect someone who's never been in office, who hasn't been a 9/11 dispatcher or a parole officer, because they're on PERS, and all they're going to do is rubber stamp more taxes and more government. We need someone like Donald Trump, who's a pit bull, who's going to go out there and make a change, who comes from the business sector, that's never been in government before, with common sense, and that's me. Thank you.
Okay. So.
Okay.
On with the rest of the show. All right, so what we're going to be talking about more than anything else tonight is Cheryl Walker. Over my shoulder here, what do you see, Mike?
The Walkers.
Imperial Walker.
I don't see any Cheryl. Imperial, of course, Imperial Walker, yes. Okay.
Thank you very much, Star Wars fans. So, what we're going to talk about first is, pardon me, the break-in on Tuesday into the library in Cave Junction. And the reason that Raymond Smith is here is to tell us about some of the investigation that he's done into this story. But first we're going to start with the KTVL Channel 10 story about this. Here we go.
Josephine County resident Dale Matthews says he signed the petition.
That is the wrong clip. Okay. So, as I say...
It's first from the right channel, though.
Right. Okay. So, I got that slightly out of order. What she was talking about was a slightly different story, which I'll do first, okay, guys, which is about the recall of Simon Hare and what we've told you about that recall site shutting down. And so KTVL found out about it, and as I mentioned last night on our show, they sent somebody out to interview Simon Hare, and I was there, and she said, oh, I'd like to talk with you. And I said, okay. And so this is what aired last night on KTVL. This is their version of what happened to the recall site run by, what was that guy's name? Mark Kelsey. Here we go.
Josephine County resident Dale Matthews says he signed the petition, but now he has reason to believe his signature is worthless. According to the Illinois Valley News Facebook page, Kelsey posted, "We are calling off the recall until after the election." Shortly after that was posted, the Citizens to Recall Simon Hare Facebook page was renamed to Vote Trump 16. But as you can see, Mark Kelsey left his comment about the recall effort and when he needed the signatures by. Now, Vote Trump 16 doesn't exist.
I didn't want the recall effort to lose steam, but more than anything else, I wanted the people to be able to weigh in on whether they want this kind of government.
He's not the only one who wanted to recall Hare. Many are upset the effort has come to a stop.
We don't need county commissioners with problems. The county has problems, and we don't need county commissioners sitting there with extra problems.
Commissioner Simon Hare says he had nothing to do with the chief petitioner's sudden change of heart.
I'm pleased at that information.
Yeah, I'll bet.
The county clerk is the only one who can submit the 5,094 signatures. No one can take over the recall efforts because there's only one chief petitioner in recalls.
Do you think it's fair for those people that they're not able to turn in their signatures?
I'm not going to make an opinion on the process or how it's structured. That's not up to me. The people have their opportunity to exercise it during elections.
Hare says he will continue to serve the citizens of Josephine County for the duration of his term. As for Kelsey,
hi Mark, this is Ariana Rakshani with KTVL News 10.
All attempts to reach him for an answer have been unsuccessful.
Oh, that's for
With
sure.
your connection in Grants Pass, Ariana Rakshani, News 10.
County clerk says if the chief petitioner turns in the signatures, he has until March 28th to do so.
Yeah, good luck with that. That's not happening. Well, okay.
Yeah,
so,
you know, Simon didn't seem to have a problem. I fully expected him to say, listen, I am going to go out and collect the rest of these signatures myself to make sure that people have a voice.
he had said at an earlier meeting about a year ago that if people wanted to recall him, that he'd be the first to put in a donation.
Ah, okay.
So, well, his statement is his donation. Okay, so Now we're going to talk about the break-in Tuesday of the Illinois Valley the library. And one of the things I want you to note during this story is this little, they call them cutaways. They stick them into news stories. Sometimes a little too many of these, and things you're going, why is that? There are ducks walking across the road. Why is this a cutaway? Here's one of the cutaways from their story. What they're trying to say is, oh, think about the children at the library. They weren't there when this thing was broken into, and this was one of the images. That this kind of stuff, maybe I'm unreasonable. It just makes me angry. Yeah, I see it. So I think it's ridiculous that they do a cutaway of a little stuffed animal. Please.
Hey, this is Dogbert. I know that guy. Don't bash that guy, okay?
Yeah, right. Okay, so anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to play for you the story from KOBI and what they had to say about it. See, we watch them so that you don't have to. Plus, we weed out all the commercials. And only on badcounty.com. That's badcounty.com, where we don't have any commercials at all, even on our nightly show. That's badcounty.com. It's non-commercial.
Right. Yes.
They're saying that they choose places where children get their learning from.
Steve Knight used to volunteer at the Illinois Valley Branch Library.
I may have to go back there and give them a hand.
This after the building was broken into, vandalized, and burglarized Tuesday.
I was shocked.
Kate Lasky, executive director of the Josephine Community Library, says the library's door was broken, a front window smashed, and internet and power lines were cut.
There's no electricity to the branch and no heat.
Once inside, a burglar or burglars stole an iPad, gems and minerals, and damaged a computer.
It's senseless.
And something Lasky says could have all been avoided.
Here we go.
Robbery and vandalism yesterday is a direct result of not having funding for our law enforcement.
Of course it is.
This is a larger issue than just the public library. It's a community-wide issue.
Josephine County Sheriff Dave Daniel understands Lasky's frustration.
Obviously, the presence is huge, and when there's law enforcement only a certain number of days, there's obviously a window of opportunity for the criminal element.
Something that worries Lasky.
I think they're doing the very best they can. I'm concerned about the next time. The community deserves more.
Exactly the reason why Lasky says the branch won't let their community down.
It's our mission to provide library services, and we are not going to falter from our mission.
And the Cave Junction community is standing with them.
We, the people, will take it back one way or t'other eventually.
In Cave Junction, Taylor Ryan, NBC 5 News.
Well,
now,
good.
Well, that wasn't nearly as much about what happened at the library as it was about, hey, we need to come up with some other way of paying for law enforcement, so you guys better figure out how much money you want to spend. And listen, I would not be so suspicious, but I know who this Kate Lasky person is, and I know that in her core she's a rotten human being, and so I don't trust her, and I think that she's a suspicious person. Let's just say that.
Wow.
Well, I would like to point out that the library is right in Cave Junction. They do have a deputy that they spend whatever it is, $120,000, $130,000 per year, right. And I think they get an 8-hour shift per day out of the Josephine County Sheriff's Department. They don't come down here and patrol normally anyway, other than that, and I think they would be better off to take their money and reinvest in some city police department like they had years ago, instead of giving the money to the sheriff's department to have partial patrols for a shift a day.
Right, and this is a great point, Raymond, because we've just learned that for I forget what it is, a couple $100,000, we can have like 6 of these retired people, retired police officers, come in to the to the schools. So why can't you throw a couple of those guys down in Cave Junction for probably what they're spending for this one deputy who apparently doesn't show up or doesn't do anything down there, and maybe you would have a little bit better coverage. But a point that needs to be made is that regardless of the level of police presence that you have, stuff like this is gonna happen. Now, I think it's odd that they obviously had a pair of bolt cutters, because of the video that we saw has a lock sitting on the ground that's obviously been cut with a pair of bolt cutters. Yet
Really
they didn't steal. Yeah, but they didn't steal any of the computers. They broke one, but they didn't steal any. What did they take out of there? Why didn't they tell us a story about what they took?
Well, what they took was about, according to JCLI, the Josephine Library, Josephine Community Libraries, Inc., they stole $5,000 worth of some minerals that were on display, and also an iPad. But apparently they also did a lot of vandalism. What kind of thieves break into a place and take time to vandalize it? And there's been a lot of vandalism in Illinois Valley, and it makes you wonder, what kind of thieves are these? Let me just mention one other thing. KTVL.
Probably.
Yeah, probably. KTVL is another TV station, and they said, quote, a Josephine County Sheriff's deputy told JCLI Executive Director Kate Lasky that due to the lack of law enforcement in the county, there may not be an investigation. Well, we found out that the sheriff's deputy out there, Ken Lehman, has been assigned to the case. So that's not true, and is working with the library operations manager, Norma Singer, to file police reports. He's going to help her file a police report and collect information, and that the investigation is ongoing. But as we've done so many times with law enforcement in the past, of course, this is not a nice thing. Of course, we don't like the idea of people's stuff being stolen and a window being broken and everything. But think about this for a second. In Cave Junction and the environment there are less than 2,000 people out of 83,300 people in the county. Now, what this means is, for less than 2 square miles, there's one sheriff's deputy that works through the sheriff's department in the same way that these retired police officers will do. They're working through the sheriff's department. The city of Cave Junction pays, as you would if you wanted a patrol. The city of Cave Junction pays for this guy to be there. Now, Cave Junction, the business area of it, where most of the stuff is a few blocks, okay? Much smaller than any small portion of Grants Pass. But they have one sheriff deputy for those few blocks. They have one sheriff's deputy for 2 square miles. In this county, there are 1,642 square miles. So to equal the kind of coverage that they have in Cave Junction, we need a sheriff and 820 patrol deputies.
Yes, right.
Now, when they talk about, well, you're using an inordinate amount of OSP patrols there in Josephine County, which turns out to be a complete lie, in order to equal, Cave Junction should be dancing with joy. They're not, because there's thievery everywhere. Because in order to equal that in our county, we need 820 patrol deputies. They're protected if you compare that with the rest of the county. Mike?
Right. Yes, exactly. I rarely have even seen a sheriff's car in my neighborhood, and never have I seen one on my street. I have seen one out on Riverbanks Road every once in a while. You see a sheriff's patrol car there, but we don't have hardly any presence there. And I think this just may be an issue with, they have them there during the daytime, maybe they don't have them at night, and that's when stuff like this can happen.
We have a similar situation with sheriff's deputies in the county. They're not running 24 hours. Everybody knows that, so I'm not giving anything away to the thieves, and they don't watch this either. We've got a different level of clientele that watch this show. But 820, that's doing pretty good. Wouldn't you like your 2 square miles to be patrolled by a single deputy? Well, yeah, buddy. Okay, but it's true that the people there and the city council complain all the time about that sheriff's deputy out there. Here's Cheryl Walker, and then Raymond's going to follow this. Here's Cheryl Walker telling everybody what she thinks about the residents of Cave Junction. She said this Wednesday.
I remember over the last 2 to 3 years, people would come in and say, we can't afford to pay for public safety, and I've got my dog, and I've got my gun, I got an alarm system. We had an alarm system on the Illinois Valley Library. It rang for hours, and no one called 911, the sheriff, or the state police. How it was discovered was a library employee was driving by and heard it in her car, but nobody bothered to call. That kind of apathy. And if you think your neighbor's going to call when your alarm goes off, there's an example. Alarm didn't help. Nobody called. We had it on there. So that is...
And it's people are bad.
I know there's going to be people out there that say it's going to be, well, it's Illinois Valley, it's Cave Junction, it's the commissioner's fault, it's the mayor's fault. They're going to be blame everywhere except looking in the mirror.
Wow.
Really? Really? So she's blaming the citizens of Cave Junction for apathy. Now comes Raymond Smith and says, wait a minute, I know some of these people that live nearby there. This thing ran not for 4 hours, 4 hours, 4 hours, F-O-R. And Raymond says, I'm going to look into this because he's a good citizen and he lives in that area. Raymond, what do you have to say, bud?
Yeah, well, I do know people around here since I do live in the Illinois Valley. I don't live in town, but I know a few people around because, as everyone knows, I'm a horseshoer. So I have a friend that lives right near the library. In fact, he's across from the library. And when I heard this at the business session, I thought, hey, I'm going to call him and see what he says because I know better with this guy. And so I called him and talked to him, and he said no, he didn't hear anything. And he said that his wife is usually really good at hearing stuff if he doesn't, and if he's asleep, she'll wake him up, and if they see anything suspicious or, things that don't look right, they will check it out or call, other people or call the law or call 911, whatever they need to do. And he further told me that the neighbors around him are all excellent neighbors. They watch out for each other and they don't, they keep an eye out on everything. And this, the library at on the street that it's on, of course, at the right at the highway where it comes through, there's 2 other businesses. It's Carlos's Restaurant, and then on the opposite side of the street is Evergreen Bank. And then you go back to the parking along the street there, and there's a parking lot, and then the library, and across from Carlos's parking lot is a doctor's office that, depending on what time it is, they may be closed, but then you've got neighbors on the back side of the library and across the street from that. And so I was in town that day after I'd talked to my friend, and I thought, well, I'll run by the library, and it was one of the days. They're open 3 days a week for part-time, so it was during the hours that they were open. And so I went by, and my friend was standing out in front of the library talking to one of the library employees. him a little more, and he said, why don't you talk to this gal and see what she has to say? So I went in the library, and the librarian that Cheryl Walker's referring to.
That would be Roberta Lee.
That's right. And she was there, so I talked to her and asked her what I'd heard, what was going on, and could she tell me some of what happened. And just so happened that the woman that lived next to my friend across the street had came in too. So she was there, and we all talked about this. And she had told me, this neighbor of my friend, that between 10 and 10:30 a.m., she thought she heard a noise, and it kind of sounded like an alarm. And she alerted her husband to this, and they checked it out. I guess they went outside and they listened, and she said, but it sounded kind of like an alarm, maybe a car alarm or an alarm on a building, but it didn't sound like it was on that street. She said it sounded off over behind the library somewhere, maybe another bank that's over there, or possibly a car alarm. And they didn't see anything that was going on over there. She said she did mention that she saw some toys out in front of the library, but it wasn't anything to cause alarm or something that would indicate something to be wrong, like a break-in. And so now Roberta, she told me that when she showed up there at the library, she did not hear the alarm to begin with. She got out, didn't hear the alarm. A neighbor just to the west of the library on the same side was having some kind of backhoe work done in his yard, and she said it was pretty noisy. And he couldn't hear anything. I mean, this backhoe was running full bore out there in the yard, and when she noticed the alarm going, she said that one of the problems apparently with this alarm, she did tell me it was an SOS alarm system, and she said that they have an audible alarm inside the building and on the exterior of the building, and whoever went in had cut the phone line and the power line, and before they went in thinking that they would disarm the alarm. Well, that didn't work. Mm-hmm. They went in, and she said they damaged the control box for it, thinking they would do something with that, but apparently that didn't work either. But she did say that the alarm, the exterior audible alarm, was mounted on the back of the building facing away from the street. So that along with the backhoe running, that was why she didn't hear it at first when she got there. And so she did also say that the neighbor that was having the backhoe work done, he came up, and I'm not clear on whether that was when Precision Glass was replacing the glass there by the door, or if he just came by and noticed the glass broken or the police there or something. But she said he stopped and had no idea. He didn't know anything was going on. And this is how apathetic these people are, according to Cheryl Walker. The neighbor woman that I had talked to as well that was standing there, she said actually one of the other neighbors, after finding this out, apparently it's a young man, but had went out and stood guard around the library the next night. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't sound to me like people that are willing to just, turn a blind eye and turn their back on, which it didn't. I knew that wasn't true simply because of the one friend of mine that lives across the street, and I know him pretty well, and not this guy. That you would be hard pressed to find someone in this area that doesn't know this guy, and we all think very highly of him. So it's just not the case.
I have a question. If no one heard the alarm, how is it that they know that it was going off for 4 hours?
Well, it's 4 hours. Like I was unclear on that until I saw or heard what she said again. I wasn't sure whether it was. It depends on how you emphasize 4. She said 4 hours, not for 4 hours.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's FOR.
But how do they know that?
I don't know that either. I questioned Roberta on that because of what she said as far as the alarm going off 4 hours.
And she's the branch manager.
I asked her, do you know how long this alarm was sounding? And she didn't know. And I said, well, do you suppose that SOS, would that be something that they would know? Since it's their alarm system, would they be able to tell?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about electronics, but I know a lot of things can, detect how long something's been running.
Yeah.
And
when the incident occurred.
I couldn't hear that.
When the incident occurred.
Right. So she said that they had a call into SOS and that they were supposed to be coming out soon, apparently to replace the control box. And what she told me was that they were going to consult with them regarding that exterior alarm and see if they, a different placement of it would, benefit where it would be more effective, something like towards the front of the building where it would sound out to the street instead of back in the back of the building across the way,
right,
where people, it isn't clear that it's coming from that place if it's heard. So,
well, the big point, Ray, I think you'll agree, is that Cheryl Walker owes, in my opinion, an apology to the people of Cave Junction for saying that they're apathetic and they ought to be looking in the mirror.
I think you'll be waiting 4 hours for that one.
You're describing, you're describing a lot of people here and telling people something that's totally untrue. I mean, it's really harming the character of these people that live right there. And although she doesn't know them, I do, and she probably didn't count on that happening. What's the odds of that? That somebody would know somebody right there.
Right. But that is the Cheryl Walker story.
Right, and the fact is, it's like Mike says. I mean, a crime isn't a crime until it's committed. The police are usually an after-the-fact thing, especially with the property crime. They don't fly around with the red cape with a big S on the back, stopping it before it happens. They come in. If they do, they'll come in and investigate and take a report. Maybe they'll figure something out, but a lot of times it's not unless someone else either knows something about it or confesses or something. So,
right.
Really,
well, you know what? In my personal opinion, you can't have it both ways. Like the sheriff, we've seen the sheriff go, well, the murder rate's up, and if we had more people, this sort of thing wouldn't have happened. It's sort of inferring that, the reason why there's been more murders because there's not enough sheriffs out on the road. Well, if we can accept that as being true, then we can also say that if there was an adequate level of staffing and a murder did take place, then it's the sheriff's fault that it took place because he was negligent somehow.
And in this level of staffing, in this level of staffing, it would be as if we had 820 deputies out on the road patrols. I'm not talking about people working in the jail. 820. Wouldn't it be great? I don't think it would be great, but I mean, some people, full employment, boy, J.J. Schofield, the HR director, would be delighted. The unions would be too. I got a question for all of us here. Okay, so there's SOS, the alarm guys. There's Jay Meredith of SOS. There's Pat Fahey of Southern Oregon Sanitation, and there's the U.S. Coast Guard. Just a coincidence that they're all called SOS? You be the judge.
Yes.
All right, so now we're going to go on to the next story. This is something else that Cheryl Walker said at the Wednesday weekly business session. She was just a fountain of misinformation at this meeting. Here's what she had to say. It's on a totally different subject, but it is the same purveyor of stuff. And that is, here's Cheryl Walker and what she had to say about the questions that have come up about the misspending of money and her interpretation of what the commissioners did as soon as they found out that we were misspending money on a supposed arsenic scare in the water. So here's what Cheryl Walker was telling everybody in public about what the commissioners did that makes them look really good when you think about what she said, if you just take it at face value. Here's Cheryl Walker.
So we thought we had done what we needed to do. We submitted the preliminary reports that we had to the state toxicologist, and when that state toxicologist came back and told us that there was nothing in that water, we immediately exercised the provision in the contract to cancel that contract. We are contractually bound to pay for whatever work was done through that date.
Now, wait a minute. I recall this slightly differently, you guys. I recall, it just seems to me that what happened was that they did get a report, and then they didn't say anything about it. There they were at the weekly business session. They didn't say anything about the state toxicology report. They were going to move right ahead. And then two wily citizens stepped forward, public-spirited citizens, stepped forward and say, hold on a second. We did a test. We took it to an independent lab. They said there was no arsenic. That was in the evening meeting. And then the next morning, the commissioner said, whew, boy, we're going to cancel this contract. So Viken Nakudian is here to set the record straight. Is Cheryl Walker right? Did they move immediately based on the state toxicology report or what you guys had to say? Vic?
Boy, that's kind of a gray area. You know, there is a timeline to this. You know, this was way back in November, Dale, but I'd say it wasn't immediate. No, in fact, I think they were reacting to the fact that, holy smokes, the public is aware of what's going on, and they even went and did their own testing and found out it was all a load of BS. So, holy smokes, we better react now because, as you say, there was nothing said in that the meeting there, the commissioners' meeting, about any of this, and here she is pushing still to make these payments when in fact the contract gives them plenty of ways to not do so. And really there needs to be external legal review of that contract because it's really an egregious abuse of the taxpayers here. And no, they didn't move immediately. I really do believe that they were responding to the fact that, wow, the public is aware of what's going on here. It was the day before that commissioners' meeting that they had gotten the results back from the toxicologist, so one might think that something could be said at that meeting about it. Not a word, but the citizens.
Now, you alerted. I'm always a fan of surprising the commissioners, but you did alert them. And so where did they get the samples that they sent off to the state toxicologist?
Presumably they came from Eric Shaftsma to begin with. And Eric Shaftsma is not certified to do sediment testing and sediment samples. There's a list of certifications for these water labs, and Shaftsma's lab is not certified for the sediment stuff. So, boy, you know, they really should have had a certified lab handling the original sampling to begin with. In fact, the contract actually requires that the contract go to a lab that is certified to handle the testing that's being done. So, you know, and I'm just a layman, mind you. I'm not a lawyer, Wally Hicks, the actual lawyer, has recused himself because he's a good friend of Eric Shasma, so he's not stepping up to provide a legal defense for the taxpayers here. Okay, he's recused himself. But these commissioners, they needed external scientific oversight to show them that they were being misled, and by golly, for a lot of money, they really need to have external legal oversight at this point to look at that contract, which, you know, us laymen reading it see plenty of ways out. They need to have external legal oversight, look through it, and say, you know, do you really have to pay for this when you were kind of misled into it?
Right, this is a good point, because something else that she said there was that, you know, per this contract, we need to pay for work that's been done. But you also then have to, if that's the truth, you have to verify that the work has been done, and you know, quantify what that is, and verify that it has actually been done. To my knowledge, they haven't yet done that.
And there I was, sitting in the little back room for you guys, and the finance director says, "Oh, we've already cut the check." You've already cut the check? Have you seen? The contract says, and the liaison to that guy is Cheryl Walker, of course, and the contract says you don't cut the check until you've read through the studies. And Simon Harris said that. Good for him. He said, well, we haven't even gotten, you know, the other part of the contract. We have not gotten the studies. And Cheryl's answer was, well, you're not going to understand it anyway.
What the heck? You know, Simon has been the only, apparently, the reasonable commissioner here. He's the one who, from the get-go, was saying,
what does that tell you, Vic? What does that tell you? That Simon's the reasonable one.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yes, that's incredible.
The whole timeline of events here is pretty horrifying, because, you know, the testing of the site was done 8 months before the dam was ever taken out. The Army Corps of Engineers looked at it and said, no threat. DEQ looked and said, no threat. State toxicologist, no threat. Independent civilian testing, no threat. The Grants Pass water treatment plant testing the water, no threat. This one person who's jumping up and down claiming there's a threat somehow gets this contract when every other independent testing, even 8 months before the dam is removed, says no threat. How the heck? And, you know, this information was denied to the commissioners when the contract was being fished up, by the way, because the people who were pushing it on them actually knew that the Army Corps of Engineers report, you know, Army Corps of Engineers had looked this over and found no threat. They knew this. They just didn't tell the commissioners. There's so many shenanigans going on here. You have to look at the contract, and there's plenty of ways for the taxpayers of Josephine County to not be hit with a $77,000 bill, and some of the line items in there are pretty amazing, like $425 per sample for shipping the sample. $425 for shipping for a sample, a water sample? Wow.
Go ahead, Ray.
I've got a question. As I recall, there was some question in one of these meetings that I heard that Eric Shasma, I guess, he was told that the contract was canceled, and then he did not pass that on to the people that were actually drawing the samples or doing the work or something like that until much later. Is that the case? And then also, how are you bound to paying somebody ultimately if you don't carry out your own duty as to, you know, stopping the work when you're told that the contract has been terminated?
And with good reason it was terminated, because all the testing showed no threat. And you're correct about that. The timeline went kind of like this. The contract was terminated on November 25th. Eric Shasma got around to informing Shannon and Wilson on December 2nd. And of course, 30 days were up after the contract was terminated on December 20th. Remember, that's 30 days after it was actually terminated. But the work didn't stop until December 28th, an extra 8 days of billing there. And believe me, a lot of work was done in that time. There's a lot of billing to be done. So after the contract was terminated, boy, the project had to continue for some reason. There's a lot of money involved here.
So what we're seeing in both of these stories, gentlemen, is we're seeing it's not just about the Cave Junction Library, and it isn't only about the fact that Cheryl Walker is trying to blame the citizens of Cave Junction. Look in the mirror. Okay, well, something she ought to try, except there's no reflection in the mirror when she looks into it. But the point is that
objective news. That's what we do.
This is the analysis part. The analysis part. Okay, so the point of this is, look how long it took. It was instant before they jumped in to say, "Oh, we need levies. I'm the library director, and well, we sure do need those levies." Okay, all right, that's
to order. Why is it even a part of the news story? They even got the sheriff in there. Come on.
Right. Does he appear in all stories of things where $5,000 or less? I don't think so. Okay, and so then the other part is here. This is a rare inside look at a contract that's been awarded. You may recall Mark Van Holly came in and he was trying to negotiate a contract. You remember that guy? I mean, they were buying a hook, line, and sinker, and there was such a public outcry. What are you doing? That they dropped that guy. Okay, but this contract was awarded and the check already cut. I mean, it's just sitting there, $77,000, ready to send out to him. They would have, if Simon Hare hadn't said anything. I would have said something, I'm not supposed to talk, hey, but Simon did it, okay, and I probably would have gotten thrown out. Anyway, the point is that you're now getting a chance on both these issues to see what kind of string pulling, what kind of manipulation you're in for with this kind of government.
Speaking of string pulling, I'd like for viewers to go to americaspeakout.com, where there's a lot of details that give you a very good inside look at the way this contract was obtained, the scare tactics that were used, the environmentalist scare and all that, and the whole routine. It was a well-orchestrated community organizer type of operation, and it worked. And it was the diligent work of citizens of this community that discovered it and exposed it and at least stopped the ongoing contract, and hopefully can bring in external legal review to save the people of this community from having to pay that $77,000. That should never have happened. The contract should never have happened. The issue had been tested and resolved long before these guys ever went to the commissioners with their scare tactics. So get some details.
Show was brought to you by americaspeakout.com and voteforRaymondSmith.com and badcounty.com and MikeJonesIsTheBest.com.
Yes. Who's has that URL? Because it's not me.
It's Dogbert. Dogbert's got the URL, guys.
Stop it. Okay, all right. So what we'll try to always do on our show is to set the record straight if we can, to tell you the straight information whenever we can, and to offer an opportunity for people to come on and advertise their websites. I mean, no, that's not why we're here. That is a non-commercial site, is it not, Vic?
Non-commercial. It's just information at this point on this particular matter. The research, the data, the timelines. It's to let the public know the details. That's all it is. All right. Non-commercial.
All right, Mike. So here's the typical part of our show when we get a chance to talk about these two guys behind their backs. What do you think about the information that Raymond Smith brought forward? He's not an investigative. Well, he was an investigative reporter for this show. What do you think about the work that he did and what he brought forward for us there, buddy?
Well, it's nice to listen. Cheryl Walker should not have assumed that in a community of this size that people wouldn't find out what she said, or be able to counter what it was that she said. That was just silly on her part. I don't trust Kate Lasky. I don't trust that. Listen, I wish that I had a higher level of trust for our government so that I wouldn't have to suggest that perhaps they orchestrated this specifically for the purpose of putting it on TV and making an event to make it look as though crime is pretty bad because there's a plan in the works to declare a state of emergency. I shouldn't have to be dreaming up scenarios like that. But it's entirely possible with the type of people that we have here. And I just happen to know because now Kate Lasky, she's the same character who mocked Dale when he did an investigation of, the porn in the library thing. Everybody knows about that. And suggested that somehow that Dale was a pervert and that he was in there specifically for the purpose of looking at porn on library computers. Now, what kind of a person does that? That's that kind of person. So just know that going forward. And so I think it was good. I'm glad that and hopefully. Even if we didn't have Raymond to tell us that what was going on in the neighborhood, that maybe somebody else would have popped up. Because I tell you, it's a small community. You can't get away with saying stuff like that and impugning people's integrity and calling them losers and apathetic people without them hearing about it. And that was.
She owes them an apology. She owes them a big apology. I'm probably going to go in Wednesday and demand that she issue a blanket apology.
Oh, and she'll follow right up with an apology, I'm sure.
Yes, and especially Cave Junction. The other person that I'm impressed with, besides Raymond Smith, is his wife. No, wait. I'm also impressed with what Viken and Lori Johansson did, and bringing this forward. We were there. This contract would have just kept going on and on. They would have they did cut the check. They would have sent out that check if these two guys didn't come forward and say, now wait a minute, we paid out of our pocket. Good citizens. We paid out of our pocket to look into this. This is wrong. And I think that even though they had that toxicology report, that's very interesting, they didn't tell anybody, did they? They didn't say anything at that weekly business session, did they? But they immediately changed their mind after they were found out and after it was exposed by Vic and Lori. So those are the kinds of citizens that we need. We need people like Raymond Smith who are going to step forward and say, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. She's denigrating our community. Hey, and Vic and Lori stepping forward and say, wait a minute, this is a massive overspending of money on something that's completely false, a red herring or whatever color herring come in, and we need to do something about this. So I'm happy we were able to give them some time here, Mike.
That thing would be ongoing. Money would be leaking out of our treasury into the pockets of Eric Shaftsma and company had they not gone out and done this. And
where did that money come from? Couldn't that money, and Cheryl even said so, couldn't that $135,000 a year be spent on a sheriff's deputy that does nothing but stand inside the Illinois Valley Library and make sure that nobody's breaking the windows?
Yeah, of course it could. But you notice that even after they said that and they put a stop to it, they still haven't added another deputy.
And what happened to the money?
Might have added some fuel-efficient cars.
Where did it come from? Where's the money going? Whatever happened to that money? They don't like to talk about that money anymore. Where did that money come from? Where did it go? That's what we're looking into, and this is why the 3453 idea of calling in the governor was said to be, oh, this is terrible, you got to vote for the levy or else the governor is going to be called. Now they're in favor of calling in the governor, okay? And the whole idea behind this is, once they have the money, how would they spend it? You know what this is about. It's just, if it's an emergency, how come we're not acting like it's an emergency? How come when that $1 million came in that they didn't expect from the timber revenues, why didn't they spend any of that? Where did that money go? What we need to do is, and the onerous part, the part that was draconian, that they said was the state was going to come down here and do what, Mike Jones? What was the state going to come down here and investigate?
Well, yeah, I guess before there's been some changes. They were going to come down and investigate, the books and find out why there's an emergency and where things were going, but that's not part of it anymore, apparently.
Nope, they would never like that. So we're going to investigate the books as best as we can do here. We'll investigate the books if we get two fiscal conservatives in there, whoever they are, and we're relying on good citizens such as Lori Johansson, Vikin Nukudian, and Raymond Smith. Thank you very much for joining us, and that's the end of the show. Good night.
All right.